Hello everyone and welcome to Digital Delirium's first ever top 10 list. I thought about it and it occurred to me that I have done video game podcasts, I have talked about video game news, I have reported video game news, I have done video game reviews, and I've covered cons. In a sense, I am kind of an amateur video game journalist, so I figured I could probably get away with doing this. So today I present to you, a little later than everybody else did, my top 10 games of the 7th generation of consoles. First off, we need to lay down some ground rules. Rule number 1 is that there will be one game per franchise. Otherwise, there's at least one franchise on this list that would have 2 games on this list, and that's not fair to other extremely good games, I don't think. The second rule is kind of an obvious one, I think. It has to be games that I have played. What this means is that if there are games on this list that you think should be on there, they are not on here for one of 2 reasons. 1, I did not play them, or 2, I did not think of them quite as highly as you did. Unfortunately, that means that this system in particular will not be on this list at all. While I do appreciate this system and think it has some darn good games on it, I owned one for maybe a few months and that was it. I got one for Christmas, I played a couple games on it, it was stolen from me, and I never got one back. Now, I would be including this handheld system, but there was nothing on it that I thought were as good as these 10 games. And I would have included other games from this other handheld system. But including a game that I thought is deserving from it would have violated my one game per franchise list. So sadly, both of them will be absent from this list. With that in mind, let's get this list started.
Number 10.
Fear. Fear came out very early on in this console cycle, but unlike many people, I'm sure I have not forgotten about this game. I think it was a masterpiece of horror. It had an excellent story, although I will admit the story was not particularly well told. It was a very good one, and the sense of atmosphere was fantastic. Some might say that the environments in this game are a little bit repetitive, but I say that this is overshadowed by the fact that the enemy AI is fantastic in this game. These guys are a lot of fun to fight, and it makes this game entertaining from beginning to end. For the horror elements, this game really relies on psychological horror. It tries to freak you out instead of relying largely on jump scares like a game such as Resident Evil. That has a tendency to be a lot more frightening to me than a jump scare does. I am hard to scare to begin with, but this game actually managed to get my heart rate up at certain points. It really creeped me out. What is a good first-person shooter without good weapons? Fear has this as well. Aside from things like a good shotgun and a variety of standard machine guns and dual-wielding pistols, Fear also has one of the coolest sniper rifle type weapons that you will ever see in a video game. Oh, it has a standard sniper rifle, but that's not the cool one. The cool one is a laser weapon, and wait until you see what this baby does to your enemies. I won't spoil it for you. It's awesome. Fear was also one of the early adapters to the slow-mo, which has been overdone at this point, but in this game it was cool. Over the course of the game, you would pick up boosters that would increase your reflexes and increase your health, so you became a more powerful character as you played throughout it. This in turn gave you more incentive to keep playing than just progressing through the story and fighting more enemies and discovering more weapons. Fear did first-person horror 100% right. In many regards, Fear was an absolutely fantastic first-person shooter that does not deserve to be forgotten. Regardless of what you might think of its 2 sequels, this game was excellent and it has my highest recommendation. Definitely pick this one up and play it if you haven't yet.
Number 9.
Doom 3 BFG Edition. The original Doom 3 came out long ago enough that it would not actually count on this list if it weren't for this re-release of it a couple years ago. However, this re-release of Doom 3 presents one of the best package deals in the history of video games. Your hard-earned money nets you the Ultimate Doom, Doom 2, a 9-level brand new campaign for Doom 2, Doom 3 in high definition with a couple of added features, Doom 3 Resurrection of Evil, and a brand new campaign for Doom 3 called Lost Levels. Wow, that is a lot of content packed onto one disc. How could anybody say no to something that awesome? The only thing missing from this is Final Doom, and I kind of wish it had been added, but considering how much is here, including some new stuff, it is difficult to complain. This package is fantastic. The fact that Doom 3 still isn't ugly some 9 or 10 years after it was originally released is a testament to how good the original game looked. The art design for this game was fantastic. It was absolutely top-notch. The enemy animations and ally animations were unheard of at that point in time, and of course the lighting was so good that it still looks good to this day. The upgraded visuals are a nice touch unless you got to play the older version of Doom 3 on the highest setting that it would allow. If you got to play then this isn't going to be much of an upgrade, but this port is more about the consoles than it is the PC, and that's fine, because the console version of this game is by far the best. It is fantastic, and I highly recommend picking this one up. Doom 3 has some of the best sound design that you will ever find in a video game. The voice acting is decent enough. It expands quite a bit on the Doom lore and the Doom story, where the original Doom had a very basic story. This has quite a bit more for you to chew, and it's not half bad. All the classic weapons are here, and it now has a mid-range machine gun, which the original Doom severely lacked. Your only options in the original Doom were a weak pistol or a chain gun that ate through ammo incredibly quickly. Now you have an option somewhere in between, and that's kind of a nice improvement to this version of it. This also is brighter than the original, which, depending upon who you are, is a good or bad thing. Some people see it as a bad thing because they saw the darkness management of the original game as part of the reason why it was so frightening. Others see it as a good thing because you can actually see where you're going now. Pulling out your flashlight is easier, and you can attach it to a weapon or two, which is really nice. All in all, this is the definitive version of Doom 3. If you have not played this horror first-person shooter masterpiece, definitely pick this one up. It is awesome. This series deserves all the praise it can get, and this is an excellent way to collect most of it, as well as a couple of brand new pieces. Now let's all sit back and wait for Doom 4.
Number 8.
Rage. Stop me if you've heard this before. id Software released a brand new video game, and with it came the best engine on the market. I think we've all heard that before. It happened pretty much every single time that they release a new game, with the exception of Doom 2 being a direct sequel to Doom and using the exact same engine as Doom. This new engine did not disappoint. It came with the best animations we have ever seen in a video game, and it was the most beautiful game on the market. In fact, it might be the most beautiful game of this generation of consoles. This game is stunning. There are, however, two legitimate complaints that can be lodged against Rage, and they're both completely fair. The ending to this game is not very good, and The final level of this game is not very good either. Both of these are 100% legitimate. Neither one of these, however, erases everything that came before it, and everything that came before it is fantastic. What you will find in Rage is a wide variety of weapon types, from shotguns to pistols to machine guns to rocket launchers and everything in between. All of it customizable with a wide variety of ammo that you can collect items for and build yourself. And completely customizable items as well. You find parts, you find plans, you build new items. Every single type of enemy in this game has its own set of rules and AI. So every single time you go to a new area and fight new enemies, the new enemies will act differently than anything you've fought before, forcing you to change up your tactics on the fly to get used to fighting this new group of enemies. This is something that more games should do, because this really helps keep the gameplay fresh. But there's more to Rage than just running around and shooting things. You can also drive around and shoot things. It's kind of like Twisted Metal meets a traditional first-person shooter, because there are sections of this game where you are given a vehicle and you have to drive around in the wasteland. There are other people driving around in the wasteland and they will try to kill you. That's why you have to get into races and equip your vehicle with brand new items and weapons and armor, and you use these to take out the enemies. It's all a lot of fun and really helps keep Rage fresh for the 15 to 20 hours that you'll probably be playing this game. There are a lot of side missions in this game, and so there is plenty within it to keep you busy. And the multiplayer is not traditional first-person shooter multiplayer like every other FPS on the market has. Instead, this opts for basically what amounts to online Twisted Metal. And if you like Twisted Metal, that's cool. Damn near every single thing about Rage is fantastic, and it has my highest recommendation. Definitely play this one if you have not, and play it again if you remember it not being all that great. This game is awesome, and there's a very good chance that that last level just happened to leave a bad taste in your mouth. The rest of the game is fantastic.
Number 7.
Uncharted 2: Among Thieves. The Uncharted trilogy is by far one of the most praised trilogies of this generation of consoles, so it should be no surprise to anyone that at least one of them will make quite a few end of the 7th generation top 10 lists. And indeed, the second one is making my list. I feel like this one is the best one. But what makes Uncharted, the entire trilogy, so great in the first place is not just the fantastic gameplay, which is everything that the original Tomb Raider games tried to be, done so much better, but the story as well. Nathan Drake is an extremely likable and funny protagonist. Sully is another fantastic character, and this game really doesn't have any bad characters that I could think of off the top of my head. Even villains tend to be likable in some way in this game, even if it is in a way that you like to hate them. The engine that powers these games is top notch as well. These games are absolutely gorgeous. They represent some of the best graphics of this generation, and I'll tell you this, Naughty Dog always gets the best use out of the PlayStation hardware. They have since the original PlayStation, and this generation was no exception. This game is absolutely gorgeous, and I want you to notice something. Color. So many AAA games this generation lacked color. And look how much more realistic this looks because it has more than just earth tones and browns and grays. I can't praise the graphics enough how pretty this game is. The animation is also top-notch, and Naughty Dog's animation has always been top-notch, even dating back to the original Crash Bandicoot. For the PlayStation 1, that has great animation. For the PlayStation 2, Jak and Daxter had great animation. For the PlayStation 3, this has great animation. Yet the gameplay is also fantastic. You will be running around, hiding behind objects, and fighting a lot of enemies, which in a way is kind of similar to the Gears of War trilogy. This does pull far away from the Gears of War trilogy by having sections where you will be platforming and climbing all over the sides of buildings and up tunnels and all kinds of stuff. It is perilous, and the game will let you know this. Furthermore, this has some puzzle-solving sections where none of them are too incredibly obtuse, and you have a hint book to help you out if you choose to use it. The voice acting is some of the best the industry has ever produced, and the dialogue tends to be well written and genuinely funny. The music is also excellent in this series. For the most part, the Uncharted series does absolutely nothing wrong. I certainly can't think of anything off the top of my head, and you definitely should play all three of them. If you're only going to play one of them, play Uncharted 2. It is the best of the trilogy.
Number 6.
Metal Gear Solid 4. Guns of the Patriots. Creating a final chapter to a series as complex story-wise as Metal Gear is a damn near impossible feat. And the fact that this game does it well and in a manner that actually makes sense is damned impressive. And Kojima deserves all the credit in the world for giving this game a satisfactory ending. It would have been easy for this game to be complete garbage, and it absolutely wasn't. The story is fantastic. It continues where Metal Gear Solid 2 left off, and we get to play as Solid Snake, everybody's favorite character, once again. Common complaint about this is that there is a lot of story in this game, but if you're playing Metal Gear, you know that by now. Every single game is cram-packed with shitloads of story and cutscenes. But the gameplay in between it is not bad either. You get to aim and walk around from the first person for the first time. You could aim from the first person in the past games, but in this one, it lets you walk around while in first person mode. The main focus of the game is still on stealth, and you have octo camouflage this time that changes depending upon your surroundings, much like various types of lizards, for example. You'll be laying on the ground perfectly still for a few seconds, and then your camo will change to match the pattern on the ground. It does this automatically and eliminates the need to constantly switch your camo to try to find the best one to hide your current position, like we did in Metal Gear Solid 3. Considering this takes place in the future and that one took place in the distant past, this does make a lot more sense that there would be major advances in this. You also get the Solid Eye, which has a number of functions such as night vision and being able to zoom in and zoom out with it, which is a very useful tool that helps elevate this game even further. You meet a wide variety of very cool characters, some new, some old, some surprising returns, and this game also has the single biggest nostalgia bomb in the history of video games. And if you haven't played this game, I am not going to spoil that for you, but it's safe to say that this is amazing. Absolutely awesome. It's one of the coolest moments in the history of video games, and you're going to love it if you do not already. And the ending of this section might be the best part of this entire game. Gameplay-wise, this does offer up a bit more variety than previous entries in the series. A couple sections in this game are the standard stealth, for example. You drive a couple vehicles. There is a section where you're tailing a guy through the streets of London. It's got more variety than past games, which is a good thing. But I played through this game several times, way too many times for this to be excluded from this list, and it has my highest recommendation to anybody that likes this series. I don't get why there are people that are not satisfied with this ending to the series as a whole. I think it's an excellent one.
Number 5.
The Last of Us. I get the feeling that this game is on everybody's Game of the Year list, and for a damn good reason. If I was to tell you the basic setup to The Last of Us, you would immediately think that this is just going to be a fairly typical zombie-type game. But there is so much more to it than that. What if I was to tell you, for starters, that there is no villain in this game? There is no main villain. What if I was to tell you that not everything in this game is black and white? They live by a different set of rules than we do, and the main characters are neither good nor bad. That's a different change from the normal, isn't it? However, the main characters are extremely well developed and incredibly likable, They develop a very, very well-handled friendship over the course of the game. While this technically is one giant escort mission, it never feels that way. Largely because of how this game plays and how good the AI for Ellie is. If you have not played this game, you absolutely owe it to yourself to do so. It is fantastic from beginning to end. It has my absolute highest recommendation. The story is excellent, the gameplay is excellent. When you're fighting clickers in this game, especially in the darker portions of the game, and there are quite a few of those, this feels like what Resident Evil 5 and 6 should have been. It does not always feel like a survival horror game. There are moments where it feels like a normal everyday shooter. There are moments that are stealthy, and there are a wide variety of environments for you to explore and characters to meet over the course of the game. Some good, some bad, some somewhere in between. This game has everything you could possibly want for in a cinematic experience. It is just absolutely brilliant, and it deserves every single Game of the Year nomination that it got. It deserves every single piece of praise that it has gotten as well. It deserves every single Best of Gen 7 nomination that it's gotten. This game really is that good. If you have a PlayStation 3, buy this game. If you don't have a PlayStation 3 or a PlayStation 4, because there is a PlayStation 4 version, get one so you can play this game. It's that good.
Number 4.
The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. There's another one that's going to be on everybody's list, and just like The Last of Us, this is on everybody's list for a darn good reason. The Elder Scrolls series has been going strong, at least since Daggerfall, because that's the earliest one that I have played. I like this series so much that I bought a Nokia N-Gage just to get another entry in the series, that being The Elder Scrolls Shadow Key. And I wish that game would get released on a system like the DS or something more powerful, because it really deserves it. It could smooth out basically all the game's problems, but that's beside the point. The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim presents you with one of the biggest, most massive, and most fun to explore open worlds you will ever see. And you get to fight dragons in it. That's awesome. This game is just amazingly fun. The combat is so much better than any of the previous Elder Scrolls games. Yes, the leveling up has been streamlined a bit, and I'm kind of disappointed in that, but I can't be disappointed in this game as a whole. Questing is better than it has ever been because it's much more dynamic than it's been in any previous games. The voice acting is the best that the series has ever had. The writing and story is the best that the series has ever had. With all the improvements they made to this, I can push past the fact that they streamlined a few things and see this for what it is. And that is maybe the best entry in the entire series. I don't know, it has very stiff competition from Daggerfall and Morrowind both. I think that Oblivion is nowhere near as good as those three, and Shadowkey can't even come close, largely because it's hindered by the hardware that it's on. I poured 150 hours into this game building up an Argonian battle mage, and I enjoyed every single freaking second of it. My character was a damn near all-powerful badass by the time that I was finally done and had watched the credits roll. This game is simply mind-blowing with just how much there is to do, and that's the case with every Elder Scrolls game. Every single time a new game in this series is released, it's bound to be amazing, and that will continue on forward, I certainly hope. I would love to see a future entry in the Black Marsh. But for now, Skyrim is fantastic. Everybody owes themselves to play this at least once.
Number 3.
Mass Effect 2. The question was never, will Mass Effect make it onto this list? The question was always, which Mass Effect will make it onto this list? Mass Effect 3 was the easiest to eliminate, largely because the new characters were not as well developed as they were in past games, and because the original ending to it left kind of a sour taste in my mouth. Although the extended ending was much, much better in every single way, it fixed a lot of plot holes introduced in the last 15 minutes of the game. So it came down to Mass Effect 1 and Mass Effect 2. And I ultimately picked Mass Effect 2 because, in my opinion, it took everything that was great about Mass Effect 1 and cut out everything that wasn't so great about Mass Effect 1. And then improved on everything that was great. Like, this is the perfect Mass Effect game. The characters are fantastic. Some returning, some new. The character development is excellent. The story is excellent. It's got one of the best final missions you will ever play in a video game. The music is great. The voice acting and writing are just as good as the original game. You don't have to deal with the Mako, and nobody liked the Mako. The combat in this game feels more frantic and more intense than it did in the first game. The threat level is just as high as it was with Saren in the first game, and you really feel intimidated by the collectors. This introduces a lot more fantastic Mass Effect lore, as if the universe wasn't deep enough alone based off the first game. You get a lot more in this game. The game looks significantly better than the original game, especially the PlayStation 3 version, which runs on the Mass Effect 3 engine. It is absolutely gorgeous. The art style to this series is and has always been top-notch, fantastic, and it's probably at its absolute strongest here. This game almost immediately starts putting you into situations that make you think, am I doing the right thing? And the excellent choices with a lot of weight behind them from the very first game return in full force in this game. You will have to make similar choices in this one to what you did in the first one that has an effect in Mass Effect 3. That's an on-running theme for this series, and it's part of what makes it so damn good. But I would say that if you're going to play Mass Effect, do not start with the second one. It's a trilogy of games, and you really need to play it from the beginning and play through it all. The DLC for this game is also very, very good, especially the Shadow Broker DLC. That is just absolutely mind-blowing. Mass Effect 2 is the one entry in the series where they got everything 100% right. And being able to carry over a character you created in the first game and spent 60 hours with and play him in the second game was just absolutely stunning.
Number 2.
Fallout 3. With the exception of the PlayStation 2 and Xbox entry into this series, the Fallout series has always been top-tier role-playing game. But the main series has been dormant for quite some time. There hasn't been an entry in it since Fallout 2, and there hadn't been an entry in the series that was worth a damn since Brotherhood of Steel, the tactics game. Bethesda took it upon themselves to revive this series, and they couldn't have done better no matter how hard they tried. I can hear the fanboys of the original Fallout games crying foul on this and insisting that New Vegas is a better game. And New Vegas is damn good in its own right, but I think Fallout 3 is better, and I'll tell you why. New Vegas crashed on me something like 12 times, and the frame rate would drop down to the single digits, and it did this several times as I played through it. Fallout 3 didn't do this to me at all. It crashed on me maybe once, maybe twice, but that's it. The frame rate didn't have any major drops like that. Basically, Fallout 3 was a much more stable game. That and stepping out of the vault for the very first time and seeing the wasteland before you was just mind-blowing. They couldn't have set that up any better if they had tried, because they made you earn it. You had to play through a few hours of this game just to get there, and this game starts off uniquely. It starts off literally with your character being born, and then you design how he's going to look, and your dad in this is Liam Neeson. That's awesome. They got a major voice actor to voice the father in this, and I wish he had a bigger part. The story in this game is by far the best that Bethesda has ever told, even if the ending isn't all it's cracked up to be. It deserves a better ending, and Fallout New Vegas does have a better ending than this. You feel like, as you're traveling throughout the wasteland, everything you do has weight in some way. Everything you do matters. Everything you do changes the way the world around you operates. People react differently when you enter towns depending upon your previous actions. You will become famous or infamous depending upon what you do, and there is a ton to do. This also has probably the most well-developed and well-built world that I have ever explored. I could not get enough of the Wasteland when I popped this game in. The Wasteland even outdoes the world in Skyrim. That's how awesome the Capital Wastes are. If you haven't played Fallout 3, clear out your schedule and pick this game up, because it is well worth every single penny, and it isn't expensive. You will get way more than your money's worth when you buy this game. Fallout 3 is phenomenal, and it's almost good enough to make my number one spot. Before we get to number one, let's take a look at some honorable mentions.
Honorable mention.
Metro 2033. On the surface, Metro 2033 would seem like it's very similar to Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl, but when you actually play it, it's much more similar to a Half-Life style of first-person shooter, where it is an event-driven, story-driven game that is quite linear. That does not mean it is bad, however. This game is absolutely dripping with atmosphere, and the mechanics centered around gas masks are actually pretty cool and make this game stand out. The creature designs in this game are excellent. It is fairly creepy, the story is cool, the characters are cool, the world is fascinating and a joy to explore and run through, but it does have some problems. The game is very buggy, and there can be some incredibly annoying bugs that will hinder your gameplay. And the actual shooting mechanics can seem like they're a little bit off because enemies can be major bullet sponges where you swear they should have gone down a while ago. Nonetheless, this is a very good game and well worth your time. It just missed the cut because it's buggy and it has a few other problems. Other than that, I would recommend giving this one a try. It's one of the more unique first-person shooters of this generation of consoles, and it is a hell of a lot of fun.
Honorable mention.
Brutal Legend. I admit that I am biased towards this game because this game was built from the ground up for somebody like me who absolutely loves heavy metal. That doesn't stop it from being a fantastic game in its own right. It just means it has a badass soundtrack and a badass art design that was inspired by heavy metal. Everything about this game oozes metal. It is amazing just to look at and play through for the music alone. But this game actually manages to get RTS working on a console, and it does it extremely well. It simplifies things a whole bunch, but in doing so, it creates a user interface that is easy to use and easy to understand, and most importantly, easy to work with when you're working with thumbsticks instead of a mouse and keyboard. One smart choice that this game makes is it gives you a playable character. The main character, Eddie Riggs, in this game is not only a great character, but a great design decision as well, because you get in the middle of the battle. You're not just always sitting there watching it from a commander's point of view. You're actually participating in the battle, and you get to run around on the battlefield and order units to move to different places by physically going there, and that really helps with the design of this RTS game. This is from Double Fine, and it comes with Tim Schafer's awesome sense of humor. This game is very funny. The world it inhabits is fascinating. It's got a great backstory, and the story to this is pretty good. Each faction in this game is inspired by some form of heavy metal or another, such as the Tainted Coil being inspired by industrial metal, the Drowning Doom being inspired by black metal. It's not inspired by emo people, get it right. Black metal is much better, and Ironhead, the one you play as, being inspired by traditional heavy metal. And there is plenty of metal within this game. Ozzy has a role in this game, Lita Ford plays a character in this game, Rob Halford plays a character in this game, Lemmy from Motorhead plays a character in this game. It's awesome. If you love heavy metal, you owe it to yourself to play this game. If you love a good RTS and want to see it done well on a console, you owe it to yourself to play this game. If you love a good art style, or a good story, or good characters, or funny video games, you owe it to yourself to play this game. Don't miss this one, it is great.
Honorable mention.
Resistance 3. I so badly wanted to put a Resistance game in this top 10, but given how many good games there were, I just couldn't quite fit it in. I will say this though, the Resistance trilogy is my favorite batch of shooters from this generation of consoles. I absolutely love them. And I feel like Resistance 3 is the best of the three. Resistance 1 was an excellent launch title that really showed what the PlayStation 3 could do. It looked good, it sounded good, it crammed a lot of enemies on screen at once without slowing down. In this regard, it was rather impressive. It had some cool weapons and an alternate history story that supposed that World War II did not happen because we were too busy dealing with an alien invasion. And there is a massive amount of backstory for this franchise. Resistance 2 fell to what General Lotz refers to as the COD monster, which is to say you could only carry 2 weapons at a time and it had regenerating health. I didn't like this very much, but it did have some fascinating and amazing set pieces. It also had some incredibly memorable and unbelievably intense battles, and much like the first game, it had some really cool weapons. Resistance 3 mixes the best of Resistance 1 with the best of Resistance 2 and comes on top as the best game in the series, in my opinion. Although I wish the co-op mode from Resistance 2 had made it into Resistance 3. Why can't we have co-op through the campaign and that awesome co-op mode where you leveled up your characters in Resistance 2 both? I would have loved that. Nevertheless, this was an excellent game with a cool finish to the story, and you got to play as a new character, sort of, because he was introduced in Resistance 2. If you do not know who that is, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but this game is well worth your time, especially if you're a fan of good shooters. This is not for the Call of Duty crowd. It does not follow the Call of Duty formula where you're going to be corridor shooting the same Middle Eastern enemies in environments that have no color in them. As you notice from this footage, it's largely dominated by the color blue, which is way more pretty than largely dominated by the color brown. I like that a lot. The weapons in this game, of course, much like the previous entries in the series, are a hell of a lot of fun to fire, and the firefights you get into are incredibly intense. This puts you in some very, very cool scenarios as you travel throughout the USA and visit a whole bunch of different towns. It's a hell of a lot of fun, it is intense, and it is awesome. I highly recommend the Resistance trilogy as a whole, but this is the best of them.
Honorable mention.
Dead Space. After having thrived for the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 generations 5 and 6, the survival horror game almost disappeared for the 7th generation. Resident Evil went in an action direction, Silent Hill lost its way, and there weren't very many other companies attempting to produce actual survival horror games. Along came Dead Space, and we all thought it would be the savior of the survival horror genre. It was a damn good one that took after Resident Evil 4 and added a number of things such as the ability to move and shoot at the same time. Dead Space was creepy, it was very atmospheric, it had great environments and good art design, and a huge campaign backing it that included a movie that was hand-drawn. This game looked quite good. The voice acting was decent. The story was pretty good, although it didn't come into play all that much until towards the end of the game. But it was awesome. We all thought it was going to be the savior of survival horror. Of course, we all know by the time the third one came out, it had turned into an action game and lost its own way as well. But for a brief shining moment, the original Dead Space was awesome, and it carried the survival horror torch extremely well. The necromorphs are fantastic enemies, and this reminds me of a combination of the movies Event Horizon and Alien. Both excellent movies to take inspiration from, especially Alien, which is one of the best horror movies of all time and has been the inspiration for many a video game since. This game was violent, It was bloody, it was gory, it had a wide variety of very cool weapons that you could use. The suit that Isaac wore looked really cool. And it integrated all of the necessary information into the suit and a variety of other things. Your inventory, for example, would pop up as a hologram in front of you, and gameplay never stopped. The only way to unimmerse yourself in this game was to actually pause it so you could go to the bathroom. Bringing up inventories or anything else that traditionally pauses this kind of game doesn't do that in this one. Nothing breaks the immersion, and Dead Space is even better for that. If you didn't play Dead Space back when it was released, go pick it up. It's fairly cheap at this point, and it's highly recommended, at least if you like horror games. And I do, as is evidenced by a number of other entries on this list.
Number 1.
Half-Life 2. Now I can hear people crying foul on this particular pick from a fucking mile away, but I'm gonna pick it anyway. It was released on both the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 in the form of the orange box. It counts. Half-Life 2 was an absolutely fantastic game. It is pretty much a perfect shooter. This deserves a place among legendary titles such as Duke Nukem and Doom. It is that good. In Half-Life 2, you play as Gordon Freeman, the same character you played as in Half-Life 1. And it's picking up the story years later. He's kind of been in some kind of stasis state or something similar to that, and he's woken up to a world that is very unfamiliar to him. The world has been invaded by a group called the Combine, and you got to figure out who they are, what they're doing, what they want, and possibly how to stop them should you need to. The world that they craft in Half-Life 2 is excellent. There are tons and tons of great weapons to use in this game, including one of the coolest weapons in the history of video games, the gravity gun. And the level that follows up the immediate introduction of the gravity gun could not put it to better use. The level could almost be described as survival horror because it feels like you're going through a horror game almost. It's a very horror-oriented section of it with tons of headcrab zombies and tons of traps and items for you to toss with the gravity gun. This has a variety of vehicle sections within the game as well, and the vehicles are all really cool. They are fun to drive, they have a sense of speed to them, and they are not difficult to control at all. The story to this game is much better than you would expect from a first-person shooter. The story to this game is great. It intentionally leaves you in the dark on quite a number of things, but that's not a bad thing. That makes the story more open for debate as to what exactly is going on. But the characters are the real centerpiece here as far as story is concerned. They are well developed, they are fun to talk to, they're well voice acted. Ally AI in this game is not dumb. You'll be glad to have someone like Barney fighting by your side when you get the chance to. And the characters are all highly memorable because every single one of them absolutely exudes personality. This whole game exudes personality. It's got a fantastic atmosphere where you feel this oppressive overlord-like government that governs over the people and controls every aspect of their lives, and you get the sense that indoctrination is going on. A whole lot of not so good things, and you've got to figure out exactly what's going on and put a stop to it. A number of your favorite weapons return from the very first game, such as the crossbow. You will eventually run into that, and the infamous crowbar, which you picked up near the beginning of the first game, and you pick it up near the beginning of this game. This game has quite a few very memorable battles that you will fight over the course of it that really help elevate it above the level of good shooter. That on top of the fantastic art style that looks distinctly and uniquely Half-Life. You look at this game and you're like, that looks like Half-Life. You look at anything connected to this game and you go, that looks like Half-Life. The engine that powered this game was so good that it damn near rivaled the engine that powered Doom 3. One thing it definitely did better than that engine was outdoor arenas for you to fight in. This had bigger arenas that were more open than Doom 3, but the two games called for different kinds of environments because they were very different kinds of shooters. Half-Life 2 is a prime example of a shooter that does everything right. The enemy AI is good, the enemies are fun to fight, the fights are intense, the weapons are fun to fire, the music kicks in at the right time to amp up the action. The notable enemy characters are memorable, the notable good characters are memorable and likable. You genuinely care about these people in one way or another, and just everything about this game is excellent. If you have not played Half-Life 2 and Half-Life 2 Episodes 1 and 2, I implore you, play these games. They are absolutely fantastic, and they will not let you go until you have finished them. Half-Life 2 is my #1 game of the 7th generation of consoles. It is brilliant. Play this game. That's it. That's my list of the 10 best video games of the 7th generation of consoles. What did you think? Do you agree with any of my picks? Do you disagree with any of my picks? Let me know down below. If you have your own top 10 list, let me know what yours are. I would appreciate that. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. It would help me out a lot, and I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you everybody for watching, and I will talk to you guys next time. I'm Commander Shepard, and this is my favorite top 10 list on the Citadel.